Hi, my name is Jessica and I'm a Vital graduate. For me, being a part of Vital was an amazing experience. Honestly, it was a great opportunity to connect with people from all over the world who came from all walks of life, and they had all sorts of different backgrounds. So this was actually something I did not really expect, but at the end of the day was the part that I enjoyed the most. It was being able to work every week with my study group, and there was so much learning that actually happened in that space. Also from having different perspectives from people that have been doing this work for many years, or people that were just beginners to this work, people from the spiritual community, or people that, are psychologists or Jungian analysts. So that really added a lot to me in terms of networking and having a community and just having new perspectives, how this work could be done in the psychedelic space, or what are all the possibilities that lie there. So I think I felt more confident actually to what I bring into the space. And I had more connections to work with other people in collaborations after Vital. If you are interested in getting involved in the psychedelic world and making a meaningful shift in your life, visit vitalpsychedelictraining.com for more information on joining the next cohort.
Are you working in psychedelics or taking steps to get involved? Lately, we've been thinking about the future of this field, the people who are going to work with psychedelics, and how they're going to show up. So we decided to ask them. Here's what we heard from people in a new survey who are working in psychedelics right now or preparing to launch their careers. 87.6% have been influenced by their own positive experiences with psychedelics. While 47% are incorporating psychedelics into an existing career, 31.6% are switching careers entirely. And not surprisingly, making money is not the goal. A staggering 98.3% of respondents indicate that making a lot of money is not their primary motivation to enter the field. If you're curious to learn more about this growing space and perhaps find your place in it, we're inviting you to download our new 24-page report, The Emerging Psychedelic Workforce. It's packed with insights on the field you won't find anywhere else, and it's completely free. You can find it in the articles section of our website at psychedelicstoday.com/article titled The Emerging Psychedelic Workforce.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. Today we have Flor Bollini. How are you today, Flor?
Wonderful. Happy to be here. Hi, Joe.
Hi. And where are you coming from today?
I'm in Miami Beach. Just made it back from a meeting in the beach.
That's outstanding. Being able to meet at the beach sounds really nice.
Right? Yeah.
I don't know how long people like me would last, but we'd do okay. Maybe.
You do need is like kind of like 70% and hat but yeah, we get what we got.
That's wonderful. So, Flor, I'm really excited to chat with you. I think we got to meet at Wonderland last year and got to learn a little bit about what you're up to. I'm quite excited to share you with my audience. So let's kind of dig in. What is your company called right now?
My company is called Nana Health.
Nana Health.
Yeah.
Good. And what do you all do?
We empower people to heal themselves.
That sounds pretty good. So what does that look like? Is it, like a platform for self-discovery or for retreats, or what kind of stuff do you help people with?
We are basically introducing what we call psychedelic-initiated transformative medicine. And yeah, the platform has double interface for individuals and medical professionals, and we create kind of a user experience out of the hero's journey, where you can design with the framework, with the process we give you, psychedelic-initiated transformative medicine. You can design your own hero's journey and track all your journeys. And also in the part of integration, talk therapy is not enough to integrate psychedelics. So we portrayed all the lifestyle practices around body, mind, heart, and spirit that a person needs to start weaving into their life in order to create the behavioral change, right? And at the same time, we facilitate the peer-to-peer support, right? It's like we tap into the power of the group to see which protocols are leading to curative therapies and into life optimization. And this is based on the work that I've done underground for over a decade, serving 5-MeO and seeing what was needed for people really to have full turnaround, right? From -10 to 0 to go +10, that full arc of transformation.
Mm, that's super interesting and really important to think like, okay, how do we really make this stick and give somebody traction so they can make meaningful change in their lives, right? Like it's obviously the case that you can't just give somebody the drugs and it's necessarily going to change everything about them. It could, but it's not necessarily a guarantee of any kind. Yeah.
No, most
Um,
of the times when you do your first psychedelic, you realize that kind of everything you were doing in your life was wrong. And then you have to start from the ground up. So the problem that we are solving is kind of putting all the work that you are going to have to do at hand. And through AI and the assessment, we give you recommendations based on your pain. What are the lifestyle practices that most likely you will need to start weaving into your life, and then you're giving feedback to see, oh, this one worked, this one did not work. But the whole point is how you provide personalized medicine at scale, weaving ancient practices, like sexuality, sexual trauma, sexual expression. How do you weave the mystical experience? I was agnostic, I didn't believe there was a god, and then you have this mystical experience. Whatever you believe was shattered, right? So addressing key points, that Western medicine currently doesn't really know how to approach. And then, of course, like what are the things when it comes to biohacking? But biohacking that you can do cheap at home on your own. The whole point is accessibility, not only to support wealthy people in wealthiest countries, and to be an international brand, translating to as many languages as we can, and that through our platform people can support each other. Because what we've seen as well is that once you heal, you want to step up and bring your people, the one that you love, and be there for the for the ones that are going through the same journey that you've been there. And actually that become an antidepressant in itself. So how can we innovate in the way we give access to information, how to we can empower people to support each other? We are gamifying the solution also, so you have some linear content and then optionalities, and so within the optionalities you will choose based on what are the areas of yourself that you will need to work the most, and so you can create your own journey into your adventure of your own transformation.
that's great. So, who do you guys have like a target? Like, is there a certain category of person that you're trying to go for first?
We are gonna test first on veterans. um, you know they need the support, and so veterans is gonna be our first test group. And then, the second test group is going to be women that want to be healers. This maternal instinct not make you a natural healer, and women, we kind of we are born with it. This companion software that you get by having a womb gives you all these gifts that are like very conductive to healing. There are like many proverbs that says that it's a woman that leads spiritually a man, and so tapping into that, we feel important as a brand to showcase a way in which we women can work from the feminine, right? Because most of the work that we have today, we women have to work in our masculine, which is not our core, right? And so we believe it's important to introduce also this role, how we can, women, is kind of this role of the priestess in a way that has been lost. Ancestrally, we used to heal with plants, we used to heal with sexuality, with sound, with all these different, within the art of healing. So, yeah, that is one of the other aspects that we I've seen a lot in the underground, and they put a lot of emphasis on empowering women to step up and serve. And, because if you want to work from your feminine as a woman, you can be a masseuse, you can be a yoga teacher. There are not many options that we can do, but ancestrally, every woman can be a priestess, right? Regardless of your career in your masculine, you still can have this gift to be and serve and hold space for someone else. This maternal instinct automatically makes that you get it right away.
That's beautiful. And next up, you mentioned biohacking. And I don't know that everybody here at Psychedelics understands it. It's kind of funny to think that not everybody knows like the concept, but it's true. Like not everybody knows this yet. So could you lay out for us a little bit about like what is biohacking and how does that relate to healing in your own psychedelic process, maybe even?
For sure. I mean, our body is an amazing machine that we really don't know anything about, and we use it in the worst possible way. As if kind of if we were, I mean, whomever designed whatever it is like the most harmful drug available to man is what we consume socially for, as our social lubricant. But biohacking, it would be kind of reversing all these nasty thing we do to ourselves, and is in which natural ways you can start tapping your body. It would be like if currently we have you have a Ferrari and you're putting diesel into a Ferrari, right? And so how can you start using your body in the way that is intended and doing practices that may be millenary practices or innovative practices that actually help your body start functioning in the way that it can activate its own ability to heal, to self regenerate, right? The body has so many incredible properties. The thing is that we have no idea that we are a Ferrari and that we are putting diesel in the Ferrari every day. So, as basic as contrast therapy or sweat, right? Contrast therapy would be you sweat, either if it is in a sweat lodge or like sauna or steam, and then you go and you get into really cold water. And so the contrast of getting into the hot and the cold, the hot and the cold, create a series of things in your body as the blood circulation. It creates also a lot for your mind, like it really calms you down. And even just taking, if you want a cold shower, right? That can be just cold in itself. One can be creative. It doesn't mean that you need to have a steam in your house if that is not something you can afford. But like if you look into ancestral way of healings, all ancient religions used to have different form of bathhouse or sweat lodge of temazcal and so forth. So kind of my passion has been how we used to heal. After I tried my first ayahuasca, I'm like, how we used to heal before the Western world. And it's interesting to see that there are practices that repeat across all ancient cultures, and sweat is one, with steam and such, and then the cold, right? Like that is something that is also wonderful to add to psychedelics as before, to mood preparation of the mind before you're going to have the experience. Sexuality is also that it was an ancient healing practice to connect with the divine, and yes, also the use of plants, right? And so more in the Western world, biohacking may also seem a bit more expensive. It could be when you use peptides or NAD plus or all the kind of things that you can do for your body, right? That would kind of help optimize itself, right? The supplementation, right? For certain things like kind of CBD is something that a woman, since she has her puberty, she would be taking every day because CBD helps create the homeostasis, right? And so helps also to create the hormonal regulation. If you are perimenopause or menopause, it helps with the hot flashes. It also helps for postmenopause. But these are like things that maybe not necessarily doctors know, but biohacking in a way is like being clever enough, even to, for instance, for the Hindus, is to understand that if you have a healthy diet and you don't consume drugs or drink alcohols or eat animals that has eyes, your urine is going to be your elixir, and it actually has a lot of healing properties. It's a binary code, is our body. So when you drink your urine, not only heal you if you are out of alignment, it also increase the awareness. Is the first tantric practice. So there is a lot to say, about what ancestrally biohacking can be, right? It does require that you have certain form of lifestyle, let's say, or practices in order. It's like a level of proficiency. Not everyone, if you don't have a yogic path, probably your urine is gonna be full of waste. But it's very interesting to understand that the body is like a juicer, and that it actually is water purified by all your organs, 90%, 95%, and the other 5% are hormones. And so, yeah, I can speak a lot about that.
That's wild. Has there
Yeah,
been research on it? Like, have you seen any university research or anybody try to dig in on that? Because it's fascinating, and it's obviously a big thing. It's popular.
yeah.
Um,
I
yeah.
haven't seen research because I think that research is kind of very limited for what it is. Uh, Ancient practices, and there are like many things that also cannot necessary, but I don't think there is actually scientific research. But there was a president, for instance, in India, that he was very publicly open about it. And when you get burned by a jellyfish, they may have told you, or you may have read, that if you pee on it, it goes. It also contains, that's for the ammoniac, and it also contains urea, so it's very good for the skin as well. And I have an approach that I read, I understand if it makes sense. I have kind of a very scientific approach. I grew up agnostic, so I don't believe that it works or it doesn't work. I try and then I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's experiential. And so when I was living in India and practicing Tantra and doing my diet and, like doing everything by the book, I was mesmerized to learn that my urine actually tastes amazing, that it was like gorgeous, giving me feedback if I drank too much sugar. It was amazing. But because I have a healthy body, right, I was hydrated, I wasn't eating things that my body couldn't digest, and it was incredible. It did take some time of re-education, right? And it takes some discipline of having a practice, but definitely um, Ayurveda, the Ayurveda understood the mechanics of the body, we can say, like I think most than any other culture that I experienced.
It sure does. Yeah. Ayurveda. It's like a continuous stream of medicine for
Uh-huh.
thousands of years, as opposed to ours. It's only a couple hundred years old. Right.
Right.
Um, and that's probably
And the
optimistic.
breath, the meditation, the sexuality, the yoga, the food, it's a whole thing, right? And everything is also like the meditation is to get out of the mind. And they understand that the mind doesn't have the same level of importance as the rest of all the organs in the body, like in Western medicine, right? There is a hierarchy. And that your sexuality, tantra, like tantra is much more than sexuality, but it's like the whole practice. And so the hierarchy of the mind and sexuality to get to source, right, is completely different, makes much more sense than the nonsense we have today, that where is the heart, where is our sexuality, it's interesting to see, working with patients, like 3 out of 5 people that you work with, the root of their mental disorder is a sexual trauma or a sexual addiction. Not knowing how to circulate your sexual energy because it's taboo, because it's like it's seen, or whatever is what you grew up with, that being an issue, when it's the strongest and most potent force you have where you come from. it cannot not impact our mental health and put us in conflict with ourselves, right?
Well, thank you. That's great. And let's talk about who you are and where you come from. So how, yeah, like when did you start getting an inkling that psychedelics were something that you were curious about from, a more serious perspective?
So I'm Argentinian. I grew up in Buenos Aires, and my mom is a Freudian psychologist. So I grew up super stimulated, but with no faith. And after many years of Freud, eventually I turned to Jungian therapist. And it was the Jungian therapist who suggested why I didn't do ayahuasca. And I was like, huh. So I did research for a couple of years. I never really, in my house, my parents didn't drink. I never was really into drugs. I kind of, and I researched for a couple of years, and I found some papers about ayahuasca being used for, and this was like 2006. No? Um, Used for addiction, for cocaine, for heroin, and with kind of substantial results. And so I was like, okay, this is a medicine. Um, and then after a couple of years of research, eventually I was living in London at this time, and I broke my engagement. I was engaged with an Englishman, and I didn't know what was next in my life, and kind of again was at the top of the world. I didn't think, and so I went back home and I said, I think maybe now I try ayahuasca, and that was the beginning of this life.
Wow.
Yeah,
And did you do where did you do that?
in Buenos Aires.
Buenos Aires. Okay. Interesting. And was it in a particular tradition? Was it like Shipibo?
No, it was actually an Argentinian guy, like that came from a big Argentinian family that was one of the biggest ayahuasqueros in Argentina at the time. A wonderful musician, and he would get the brew from Brazil. And at the time, the circles were very, very small. 2008, like there was not many people serving. And so I started sitting with him every month. And then from there, I started traveling. And wherever I would go, put me in this passionate search. Like it drastically changed my life, like I understood, I didn't understand anything about life. And so I took it like my homework to, go there and keep on learning to rebuild myself from the ground up. And so wherever I would go traveling around the world, I would always put a line to see where there was ayahuasca, and I would just sit down and do my homework. So I got to drink from so many different hands, in so many different countries and continents, and different type of brews when it was still very underground and very ghetto. But I was kind of in general always sitting with men, and the doses tend to be, or the space that was held was kind of, yeah, too strong. And I think I somehow I had the character to be like, no, this does not resonate. I don't care what you say, it's not for me. And so um the medicine eventually, after maybe 25 ceremonies, when I process all my things, like my life, my understanding about myself, then there's a point that you can be in service to others. And then I started to test with other people, and then I started asking the medicine, like, what am I supposed to do with my life, why I tend seems to have so much, be so lucky, or that is when ayahuasca started to show me my path, that this was my path. And I was like, no, 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 no. I didn't want this to be my path. But also, yeah, you don't escape your destiny. So it took a while, until maybe 20 ceremonies more, for me to realize that I couldn't escape my path, and that these feelings that I was having of being overdosed and not being served in the proper way, and having the character and the present to tell them off when I felt to, and not let them, do what they wanted with me and so forth. That maybe was for something. Um, but she made I was only sitting with ayahuasca all this long, right? She was my teacher. And in one of the ceremonies that she really liked, that was the unbeatable argument for me to be okay. She's not joking. She goes, and now that an Argentinian politician with a background in chemistry became the Pope, which excuse you have not to do your work? And I was like, oh my God. And she showed me like these, like the Chilean kick, you know, in the football court. And she showed me like, you want to be a rock star? This is how a rock star looks like. This is basically your. I didn't understand then that what she showed me, that was what I was meant to do with my life, and that was my path, right? But she showed me this window of opportunity to help redefine which are ancestral medicines and which are drugs. And this girl that had the knee boots that looked like me, like kind of rocking, is like, this is dedicate your life to bring these medicines to the forefront of humanity. So I was like, okay, I guess that I can not say no to this one. So yeah, and so in 2013, when Jorge Bergoglio became Francis first, I was okay. So then, what's next to you? And she was 5-MeO DMT. So she sent me there. I was kind of the first woman to serve five, and she encouraged me to serve
What
how I.
year was that around?
2013.
13. Great. It's pretty
To
early
serve,
for 5. Yeah.
yeah, how I would like to be served. And at that time, the standard dose was 100 milligrams, very Mexican habit, which was brutal, brutal. So she was like, go there, 5-MeO, serve how you would like to be served. And I was like, and now what? I say I'm a shaman, you know? like, and she's like, go and become a priestess of the most ancient divination system in the world and learn how to be a professional curandera. And so she sent me to initiate in Ifa as an African priestess of Sanaya Nifa, which actually that has been my favorite part of the whole thing. That is that's like the Harry Potter school, one can say, right? And the understanding of how Africanisms see the world and the universe and the metaphysics of the structure of where we live, how, the first layer is ancestors, the dead that are not dead, how do you communicate with the forces in nature that are the deities or semi-gods, and they're all living things, so you see God in everything, right? And so that helped me not only integrate my own mystical experience, it also create a living dialogue with the forces in nature, with my ancestors, with my higher self. Even your ori is called your head, right? And you can offer things to your head, and it's just bring back the basis of craft, understanding these. Uh, the most fundamental aspect of life, right? That you are creator of your reality and how this works. So yeah, I went deep the rabbit hole. They say the only way out is through, and so I
And
fully
where was that?
at the same time, that it was in 2013.
Oh
So I
wow.
went fully, I initiated fully as a high priestess. There were like 4 different initiations. I'm still learning every day. I take classes, is an oral transmitted. I have my altar, like when I travel, like kind of when I move, my altar is equivalent to my suitcases of clothes. That has been an improvement in my life, you know. But yeah, no, it becomes very, very real and fascinating, um, and kind of understanding that, yeah, my destiny is to back bring forward, forward to basics, bring back to the forefront of humanity the practices that we have been using constructively over millennia, and that they combine all beautifully, because the Nana protocol is basically a combination of Africanism, shamanism, Ayurveda, all within the context of Western psychology, right? So
Mm.
it's just we just call it lifestyle practices, um, but in essence, right, is simplifying the complexity. How do I live a woke life? Um, once they blow you up, because I think that it's unfair that someone would give you a psychedelic without telling you that this is going to put you in your hero's journey, right?
So I love the framing because this is, I think, for a lot of people, kind of a holy grail style project to be able to synthesize all these things with contemporary practice. Like, how can we actually, in fact, merge ancient and contemporary stuff into a system that seems to make sense? It's fascinating. I love that you have the African element too, because that's, religion's been alive there, I think, the longest. And so um, yeah, that's beautiful, and I'm really excited to learn more about it. So, um, yeah, it's a just to show this off. Like, this is still a really contemporary thing that's going on. It's called the Voodoo Gnostic Workbook. It's gigantic, and
Well,
it's like a some very interesting missionary did some work in Haiti and decided to become an initiate. And I think he was a priest, ordained priest, and kind of just spent a lot of time with the Haitian traditions, which are certainly different from African traditions, but there's a lot of diversity in Africa as well in those traditions. So it's really really just cool to see that it's contemporary and that you've kind of stepped into that water as well and found a way to really help folks. I assume there's this whole idea of helping folks connect with ancestors, maybe.
yes, and also with your creating power, right? I mean, it's quite phenomenal. Like this idea. I mean, it's for non-believers, really, because I was a non-believer and I had no framework of religion or anything, right? But then, kind of psychedelics screw that up. Either if you are agnostic, then you have a psychedelic experience. Like, well, it doesn't matter what you believe or not believe before. Now you had the experience. You know there's something, but you don't have a framework of how to bring it back what just happened, right? And especially serving 5-meo is very drastic. There is no god, then there is a god, you are god in 5 minutes, right? And so definitely Africanism was, I mean, let's put it this way: the ways I found to connect direct with the divine has been plant, sex, and craft, right? And if you give me to choose to keep one, I probably keep the craft.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And by craft, you mean doing the spirit work, like
Right.
doing the
Which
yeah.
is,
Mm-hmm.
but again, it's kind of so ridiculous that we only know of low craft instead of knowing of high craft, right? I didn't even believe in low craft, but actually I was wrong. It does exist and it has power. But it's very interesting when ayahuasca sent me to school, and I was like, oh my God, right. Like, kind of, it makes sense. Like the worlds that you get, and then how you can communicate and how you offer to certain deities, and then there's also a divination system, and all different ancient technologies have different form of divination too. Like I Chin, in this case, like it's all with coins. In this case, it's with shells, or with chains, and just fascinating. And your communicator is like a cosmic GPS, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm.
these are things that we are like in a very colloquial way, not the divination, but of course they will have the resources to connect with people if they want to divine. Um, just the basics of understanding, of some basics of metaphysics to understand, how to communicate and start engaging and to see God as nature, and as living forces that you can start communicating with. And what you would call a manipulation would be an offering. When you are offering to certain deities something that could shift that energy in some direction.
So the idea that we can actually, um, outside of a psychedelic substance mediated experience, we can also have these experiences and communicate with quite powerful things, and perhaps change our lives, change the world. Like those are really big things that it's not really, Hopkins isn't really doing this work yet, right? So it's coming on like individuals with really interesting lived experience, having the ability to jump in and say, okay, yeah, we're going to do some really, interesting, different kind of work, and still get results. Like anything else you want to kind of add about? You call it Africanism, which I find interesting, and it's a cool title. But
Animism, I think that describe kind of the same, seeing God in nature, right?
right, yeah, it's like if we wanted to do a taxonomy of religions, totally, like that's a big
But
one.
also, I think if you track it back, humanity, they were the first one on Earth, right? So clearly they had, or at least if where ayahuasca sent me to school was the religions of kings. They used to have these magician or priest that would communicate with the gods. So then the king, when he had to make decision for the masses, he would consult with the gods through the priest, right? And I think that we lost that connection with higher intelligence that our mind in order to make decision for ourselves or for the rest, and that is how we kind of, right, went so down. um, that disconnection with source, as well as the disconnection with nature. And so I think that currently psychedelics bring this opportunity to reconnect us back with ourselves, with nature. But also psychedelics come, they don't come alone and isolated. That's why my work and contribution to the space is like how psychedelic was used ancestrally, not just around the particular shaman that one could track, but what are the lifestyle practices that were used back in the day together with plants that come along the way for one to live a sustainable life, right? And to thrive. And in that, they were communicating with the gods. And today we call them crazy that they will dance for it to rain, but actually the crazy ignorance and pretty sad is us. Those guys were quite on point of all the majestic abilities that we have as humans. And I think that psychedelic is starting to show us that we don't understand anything of how we are living right now.
Where I live, we do a substantial ceremony for snow every year, town-wide. um, and sometimes it works. And so there's this interesting concept that you kind of laid up here. This idea that, probably since Isaac Newton, we've been kind of running the world without any kind of divine inspiration, right? Like it's to substantially speak of. And I think, it was okay for a little while. It got us to today, which is kind of okay. But there's a lot of problems have developed as a result. And it sounds like leaders will need people like, this new type of priest, perhaps, to help us understand what is our proper relationship to that and to the planet and
Right.
to source. And like, we can operate better.
But that's the thing is like, I think because we delegated the communication with God to an institution that would do the talking for us rather than us communicating directly as we do on the psychedelic experience.
Mm-hmm.
Sexuality was another form of connecting directly with the divine that was erased from the map thanks to Catholicism, right? And uh, and women, by making love with us, where we were the tool of serving the medicine that would get you to the divine, or by making love as a connection to the divine, we also went down, right? And that is the institution of the church. So that was very interesting that now we have a pope that is a revolutionary. It's like Che Guevara and Eva Peron combined, sitting as the biggest religious leader of the Western world. That is the first time that is including women in this very, sick male, structure, that he is like bringing such a reformist and progressive changes to dismantle that ticking bomb that has created ripple effects, that now we can see what happened when you suppress your sexuality for so long, when you condemn a sin your natural life force. It creates devastating consequences, not just with the pedophilia cases that we see inside the church and outside the church, and the incest and the devastating disaster that it happens when you are in conflict. It creates the biggest form of perversion. But the good news is that 5-MeO, as the book The Immortality Key portrayed so beautifully, my favorite chapter is the toad Eucharist, as the chapter 16, and that was what ayahuasca showed me back then when he became the priest, the pope, is that 5-MeO managed to fully dissolve the ego. So no matter how dark is your perversion, how whatever is what you have done or your issue, this ability to fully reset the brain, it completely shatter everything into light, becoming one with the divine, and is treatment for most of the most complex, um, uh, untreatable diseases that we have today. Because how do you treat pedophilia? How do you treat sexual trauma? They are not really, you want actually, I'm saying MDMA would be a treatment for sexual trauma, but 5-MeO is more effective than any other psychoactive compound, with the exception of ibogaine to treat the opioid withdrawal, because it's the most potent to create the mystical experience, and it's the experience of becoming one with source. So it's quite fascinating the time that we have, that actually just 5-MeO either goes inside the church, so then you can have an Eucharist of 5-MeO, go and smoke, become one with the divine. That is what the Eucharist should be, more than just a paper thing that doesn't taste for anything and doesn't do anything, right? So yeah, that's
Right. Calling for a real transformative agent in the ceremony. Yeah, I
and
think.
let
Mhm.
and to have the direct experience. Don't be our intermediary anymore. Let me communicate directly with source, because that is how we've been designed to work. And when you took that away from us, it actually affects us enormously. First, because we lose our connection with nature, we lose our connection with ourselves, we lose our connection with one another. We don't understand sexuality as a healing and spiritual practice. It's portrayed more like being a pig, being slam on. It's like just, and this is the only thing that we have a sex education, or how sex is portrayed. All the most direct ways of connecting with source have been demonized. They are the darkest thing they are out there, right? Sex is porn, but originally it was tantra. Witchcraft, it was high craft and ways to connect direct with the divine. And psychedelics are like drugs, or like cocaine. They're like, actually, cocaine is a master plant that has been raped and made into cocaine. So it's kind of interesting to see the consequences of what the establishment of religion is like. No, you are your shadow and you heal yourself. Here the roadmap. You do it for yourself, and here are like the basic knowledge that you need to get it right. Here we curate the luminaries in the space around what are like the main topics that you need to understand: body, mind, heart, and spirit. That is who you are, right? And go and do is your journey, and you share your journey with other like you, so people can see what is working for you. And here you support each other. You don't need a licensed professional or a medical professional. you know in in developing countries, only 23% of people with issues receive treatment. In developing countries, only 3%. So we are building a platform for the whole entire world. We are going to translate it into as many languages as you can, and just provide the basic content and knowledge that they need to feel empowered to go around, to go and do their own journey through this life. It is for warriors. Yes, you need courage. You need boldness, because we are combining the most scary things combined. These things really push all your buttons, right? So definitely you need courage. But I think it's time, having, taken all these direct communication with source is driving us to probably like an I mean, I don't know if it's reversible, the trajectory that we are in, towards extinction. But at least, in this way, when you go, if how we go, it's important at least that we know that we can go, and it's an evolution, like how it looks on the other side. And at least the time that we have left here may us rocket in the best possible way, because that is the important thing, is which level of consciousness am I living this plane, and what I'm contributing in my life. So that's basically what we are bringing to market with Nana, simplifying that complexity. And here you are your hero in your own story.
Mm.
You got this.
It's so beautiful. It's the idea of just super empowering people and bringing in spirituality, and how, realistically, spirituality living really should just be us preparing for what's next. And, facing it with courage, as you say. And it's not easy, but it's really, I'm just learning all this about your platform right now, and I'm pretty impressed that it's like, that systematic, that kind of forward thinking, like spirit forward. It's really, really damn cool. So thank you. There's some things that were coming up for me during that last section. Have you ever seen this thing that Timothy Leary put out, this starseed transmission? Timothy Leary was in prison for a long time doing a lot of LSD and research. And he came really into like channeling and finding interesting contacts. And this one is pretty interesting, and it speaks a little bit to what you were kind of getting at. And it was like, the stars are calling us, and we need to get ready for the stars. And that could be metaphorical, it could be literal. But this kind of time period, it kind of speaks to that, right? It's really tumultuous. Like, who knows what's going to happen to Earth? Some people are like, Earth was just here to like help us transmit to the stars. It's a fascinating concept. I don't know where to land with that, but it's, it kind of, from a certain perspective, you could make that argument. I don't know where I land on it, but the idea is like, I just read this really interesting book on AI called Life 3.0. And the end of the book, it was all just about, how can we last as a species, or how can life or complex intelligence last for the next many billions of years. And that's kind of a big part of the mission, according to these AI people. But I see that rhymes a little bit with what we're doing here in the psychedelic space. It also, the Timothy Leary starseed transmission, like, check that out. It's short. It's only like a page. But it's an interesting read.
I think when we try to when we said to expand it's like, I think that first we should try to master life on Earth and get it right, right? Because there was a time where we were living like gods and way more aware of what we are capable of, right? I don't think that right now we are really crushing it in that sense. I think that life in general is quite devastating, for everyone, even for the privileged, right? But also the privilege, I don't see many privileged taking responsibility and stepping up. I think that there is a level of, uh, you know, in some ways, I see that certain billionaires have mental disorder when you have so much and you still want more and more and more, and you would go so far. It may not have a name, but that for me is a disorder. And so I think that when we, I don't know if I would be so eager to be thinking how we are gonna extend forever. Like, I think we are afraid of dying because we demonize death in the West. So, I think that there is much more, rather educate yourself to the inevitable aspects of life, but also, like, if you don't know how to die, that's the important thing of five. You go and you die while you are alive, and then you live your life in a completely different way. So that's, then looking back was like, well, it wasn't my choice. uh, I just had to do what I was told, right? Even though I really try not to. But looking back was so interesting to serve thousands of people and see what happened across the board to all that thousand people now, over the years, and how they were changed, and how, the boldness that come after that experience, like when you remove that fear of over your head of dying, right? Like, there is so many layers of lies that we've been, indoctrinated into, that psychedelic had the power to shatter, starting by dying is not that, something really to fear in that way, right?
Mm.
So it's something more that one looks forward. Don't die before it's your time. That would be the thing. And go and accomplish what you came here to do, so you don't have to come back again. And so, but again, there are like so many. I think that, again, it's you really get into so many dogmatic discussions, but most important, I think, at least the exploration, your personal exploration of your own reality, whatever that is for you, and portray and provide that opportunity to people to have their own experience of what that is. And we are also, like, we are not really giving administration of substance only when it's concierge, but in general we are like, showcasing the best retreat centers in the world, or compounds, or practitioners for you to go. And if you cannot afford any of that, we give you self guidance of administration, with the reference, so you can do whatever you can where you're at, right? um, and again, like, even the content that we provide is just to give you the initial guidance, what calls your eyes, then you can go down in the rabbit hole depending what you need. And we understand that, some people may go all the way, some people may start and, not be ready and maybe come back later, but at least there is a choice. At least you will have a choice that, hey, if you want to do the work, here is a roadmap, rather than currently it's like no one knows. They should have taught us this in school.
Mm. Hmm. What does support look like? So it sounds like maybe there's some sort of group kind of support, like people get together and kind of peer support each other as
Right.
they're exploring.
100%, because it's way more, I mean, someone that has been where you are at, and that has experience with these medicines, that can be your cheerleader, is probably more qualified currently than licensed medical professionals that never try these substances, that are starting to learn from papers. The reality is that unless you're taking these medicines yourself, it's going to be very hard that you help someone integrate these experiences. And I think that as therapists, um, because of how they are educated, unless you're a transpersonal psychologist, your training, normally you don't believe in God, so it's going to be hard to integrate the mystical experience. You don't necessarily learn that the lifestyle practices, like your nutrition, your sexuality, your touch, has to do with your lifestyle practices. Psychiatrists tend to solve with drugs. There is no magic pill, and Western medicine has to accept that fact. There is no magic pill. Psychedelics are not it. You have to put the work. And so I think to try and change a whole medical system that wanna profit out of your chronic sickness is not really the way to go. So that's why we are tapping into a movement that started with THC, that opened the doors for the decriminalized nature, that people are taking medicines on their own, and that many countries are following suit. And our platform would support to take the care out of the clinic into the community, into the culture through a movement, and provide the support, not only innovating the way we give access to information, but also to support people to support each other. So you can learn what is working for other people like you. You can share and learn from the intelligence of the power of the group. And of course, we will have a medical interface so you can monitor patients in real time when they are at home, when they need you the most. They will have a framework of all these lifestyle practices so they don't have to, come to learn all of these, and just the system can show what are the lifestyle practices that they can complement to their talk therapy and to the um, psychedelic they're having. This can also be used without psychedelics, by the way, as well, right? At some point, you don't need the medicine anymore. At some point, it's your lifestyle practices that sustain your transformation. But also, then you can tap into the power of doctors and the power of the group to learn. Currently, doctors learn from Ateneos, are cases of dead people kind of thing. So how can you actually provide all this new industry that is would have to unlearn a lot of things, because psychedelics is kind of shattering all of what they also been trained to believe, right? um, and that is kind of, in a way, the solution we feel is the best that we can do for the space, because also talk therapy is not enough to integrate psychedelics. It's kind of 10 people that you need. You cannot impart all the knowledge of what it takes to live a woke life. You can maybe be there to support and to ask questions, not to tell them what is wrong with them, is to ask questions, to, give them the encouragement. But definitely it's the whole roadmap of how to live a woke life is something that has taken us decades of seeking and searching and looking. I haven't met people that got it right away. So simplify that complexity, standardize it in online content that we can translate into as many languages as we can, allow people to support each other, you know not only in the forum group, then hosting, group per affinities, when then you have kind of the more evolved persons that in this role, kind of, if you may call it, a sponsor to model AA, right? That is kind of the most proficiency, can hold the space, and people with the same affinity come to share together. And that is even an amazing role. It's so fulfilling. For one, is the best antidepressant. Once you have healed, no one goes home and just stay content. They go into impact, right? So the platform will allow, if you want to go into impact within the space, to do that, to become an amazing woman, we will have the training for that. Or if you want to go into climate activism, whatever it is, we will try to showcase how, as you jump into life optimization, that is a vertical of treatment that we are introducing to. Yes, you can cure and get better with the same protocol that take you out of bed from -10, that you couldn't, for 20 years being chronically depressed. You can throw that out the window, get to zero, but with the same protocol, then you are going to become a hero if you want in your community. Step up in the way that you feel, and we will support you in whatever way, and we will keep on adding. But these are like just the first one that we've seen over and over again, that people go in these ways.
It's super, super fun. I love that. And like the idea of adding purpose, like helping people discover purpose, is a big deal, and perhaps their purpose, right? Dharma. And that would be quite interesting at scale.
Because
Like
also the
everybody knows
depression.
where they're supposed to be.
Exactly.
Hmm.
If you are doing something that you hate, how you're not going to be depressed? And
Right.
there's
Every
no
single
peace.
day.
Exactly. So a lot of time taking the psychedelic means, well, you are going to have to flip your whole life around. And it will take a couple of ceremonies, and it would be a journey to get you there, right? But so in the part of spirit, passion and life purpose and creativity is an area that we will be hammering on besides the mystical experience. The spirit is important. And spirit is something that it doesn't exist in Western medicine. The same on the heart. There is an emotional body that get trauma, and normally this is before we are 6 or 7. Our heart get broken, and we keep on collecting wounds in there, and our personalities build around that, right? And depending your coping mechanism, you end up with with a mental disorder, with a chronic pain, or depending the clutches and addiction or whatever is that keep you going, in your everyday. So yeah, it's interesting how psychedelics also is like a, take it as a Pandora box. Many people reconnect with that. What was that energy? Well, that's your sexual energy, or like having full body orgasms in ceremony. I was like, whoa, and sexual healing, and also like sometimes the memories of abuse came back. How are Western medicine gonna deal with that? They don't. What are you gonna go and speak with a sexologist about it? It does require a completely new approach, and yeah, that's what we are hoping to introduce with psychedelic-initiated transformative medicine, empowering people as their own healers,
Mm,
empowering people as their own healers, but actually, yeah, heroes too.
it's beautiful. Um, so, huh. So what kind of feedback are you getting from folks? Like, I assume you've had a few people through the protocol so far.
Yeah, well, yeah, we've been doing this for over 10 years, right?
Hmm. And this is the same framework that you started with, and just keep evolving, right?
Yeah, we just made it agnostic to compound, because when you work with 5-MeO, the framework for integration is not more, there is no compound that is more complex than that, right? And actually, the doctor that Dr. Martin Polanco, who validated my technique of how serving 5-MeO and applied it in his clinic, he was also working with ibogaine. So then we both came to the same conclusion of what it actually takes to radically transform your life. So this basically the framework of this protocol was used for 5-MeO and ibogaine combined on Navis Hill. So if you manage to turn around those, there's nothing more complex than that, because besides having all the mental disorders in one person, they also have traumatic brain injury on top of that. And so the way that we saw to bring this at scale is remove the dissociative experience we were giving with 5-MeO that you can give it with, in this case, ketamine, right? And again, unless it's concierge that we rather showcase the best centers, clinics, and practitioners, not to compete in the space and provide what is really missing. That is, no one talks even about preparation. Without a proper assessment, you most likely are overdosing the person, or maybe it's dosing the wrong compound. And then it doesn't matter how much integration you do. There's nothing you can do in integration when you've been overdosed with the wrong compound, maybe. And also, like, if the only thing that you are relying on integration is talk therapy at 100 or 200 bucks an hour, like, you don't get very fast. So we know these by heart in the underground. I think the underground The overground is learning very slowly. And it will take a lot, like kind of, an epidemic of addiction with ketamine to start, Um, so it's important to understand that lifestyle practices come a long way, that empowering people to take ownership of their transformation, and the same when it comes to dose, progressive dose. You don't need the hero dose, is fundamentally wrong. It was said in the 60s saying that if you didn't do a hero dose, you were being irrespectful. That is completely wrong. you know it's only personalized medicine. The effective, the minimum effective dose for whomever you have in front, and assessing the individual and incorporating their feedback, and then you double that dose. Not like I just give you a bomb because this is what it is to be macho. These medicines are ancestrally were served by women because we naturally progressive dose. And then you wouldn't have post-traumatic stress disorders or these horrendous journeys. That also, then how do you integrate that? You have to assess, the person spiritually. Have you ever had a mystical experience? Do you believe in God before deciding that I'm going to give you 100 milligrams for you to cross? How, some people had issues integrating that the God was outside of them, and then they became God, and then they're shattering. So it's just so complex, and it has been taking so careless, this brutal way. No, 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 no. Slowly, it's a life path. There is no hurry. So all of these aspects, and also like your trauma is going to show up if you have a trauma, and maybe a trauma that you didn't remember. So then imagine all the complexity of all the things, the mystical experience and the trauma that came up, and then like, how do you harm more the person that you were trying to help it, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
to understand that it's a life journey, it's an ongoing journey.
Right. Yeah. Well, Flor, I really appreciate this. This has been fascinating to know that somebody's made what you've made available to the public. It's like it's fascinating. I don't know enough yet. I'm going to learn more for sure, but it feels like it's a really interesting initiatory framework, and you have the word in there in the title, and yeah, making really powerful people in the process. Hopefully, it'd be really interesting. Well, Flor, anything else you want to share before we wrap here?
I think I talked way too much.
What's the website?
nanaheals.com.
All right. Amazing. Flor Bollini, thank you so much. And I hope we get to do this again.
Pleasure. Anytime.